Well, good day again to you. It is February the 8th. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs if you're new, and welcome you back if you have been here before. But like I always like to say, you want to know more about Maitreya and the Master's Wisdom, look into it, investigate it for yourself. Check out those links that I provided in the description portion of these videos. Now, I had two people who asked questions in the last video, and the video got too long when I tried to record it all in one video, so I broke it up. So this one is actually Alex's question. Alexander Mullen is his name, and he asked me via email. Benjamin Creme, through his master, used to verify if people who felt they had met Maitreya had indeed met him or not. He, in one instance, claimed a man in London giving out free hugs and wearing bright-colored clothes was indeed Maitreya. This gentleman was said to have visited the peace protest in London and was even pictured in Share International. Now, the thing is, I have found out who this gentleman is, and he is not Maitreya. He was a one-time businessman running a public house in London, and woke one day and declared he was disillusioned with his life and subsequently became a Sikh. This man was once married, has a son, drives a colorful car, wears colorful clothes, can be seen on YouTube, and even has social media. The name he goes by is Kala Kala Colors. How then do you explain why Benjamin Creme claimed that this guy was Maitreya? Either he or his supposed master is lying, or in Benjamin Creme's head, he believes what he is spouting. One other thing. If Maitreya is giving interviews, has anyone ever seen interviews? For example, Share International volunteers. If this was taking place, people would be talking about him. The only guy who came close is Raj Patel, who denied being Maitreya. I look forward to your response. Thanks, Alexander. Well, thank you very much for the question. So I'll get on into it. All right, so let's talk about the first one first, Kala Kala Colors. So you asked to explain why Ben said he was Maitreya when you discovered that he clearly wasn't. So first and foremost, you're asking somebody that's not Ben, and you're also asking somebody that was not physically there and saw this man. Okay, so this is only coming from third hand. Okay, so I'm just going to lay out some different scenarios for you to think about. Now, I do this also with the interview thing. Okay, so people say, well, why am I not seeing any interviews? And I'll say these same scenarios out there, okay? And I always kind of throw it out there, and secretly in the back of my mind, I'm kind of hoping that somebody would do the same thing, but on their end, right? And be willing to admit that they might be wrong. I don't think that that's what people do generally, but I'm just going to throw it out there like this. So the reason why I'm saying this, the first possibility is Ben is delusional, or was delusional. And he made the whole thing up in his mind. Perhaps believed it, perhaps didn't, whatever. And he was an artist of some reputation in London, had a kind of a career for himself with selling his paintings, maybe had a breakdown some kind of along the way, and started hearing voices in his head, maybe became schizophrenic, I don't know, right? And devoted his whole life to what he was hearing in his head, created a movement, it didn't go very far, now he's dead, it's just going to die because there's no truth to it. That's what you're saying, right? I mean, that's really, or you're implying with that, right? That is a possibility. I'm throwing it out there to you. I don't think that that's true, or I wouldn't be talking about this, but let's just throw that out there as a possibility. Now, the second possibility is he made a mistake, that it wasn't Maitreya, and he never claimed to be infallible, and neither does his master, or neither does any of these other masters. And they do make mistakes, and there are mistakes in the Bible. So if you're a Christian and you think that there's no mistakes in the Bible, read it again. There's a lot of different things that they contradict each other, right? And there are those mistakes. I don't know. I'm just saying, it's just, he might have just made a mistake. Does that invalidate everything else that he said? And that's kind of what you're doing. That's what you're wanting to do, is you want to invalidate everything that Benjamin Creme said based on that. So that's the second scenario. The third scenario is the woman who had the experience, who wrote it in. From what I remember, I don't know if she was necessarily believing it was Maitreya. She just had this incredible experience, and maybe somebody told her to write it in to see if it was Maitreya or whatever. I don't know. But she wasn't necessarily somebody that was, from what I understand, to be totally in on what Benjamin Creme was saying was true anyway. And did he just publish it and never said it was Maitreya. I don't know. I don't have the magazine to go back and refer to. It's somewhere in my attic somewhere. I don't feel like going up and get it. And this has happened before with Wayne Peterson, where he had all these experiences that he said were Maitreya, were one of these masters. People really got into it. They thought Wayne Peterson was the heir apparent to Benjamin Creme. I mean, all this stuff. And he kind of went off on this tangent and started thinking that his master was working through him the same way that he was working through Ben. Maitreya was starting to work through Wayne Peterson the same way that Maitreya was working through Ben, and so forth and so forth. And you can see videos of Wayne Peterson talking about what he believes. And he had these experiences. He talked about them. I remember reading it going, these sound crazy. I don't understand where these are coming from. They didn't even sound like anything coming from these masters. I thought they were from the master, but it didn't make any sense. They were published in Share International. People eventually called Ben out on it, one conference. And I remember the look on everybody's face when he goes, I never said they were Maitreya. And when you went back and looked at the magazine, sure as a world, there was nothing in there that said that he said that it was Maitreya. Nothing. But people just assumed it was because it was published in Share International magazine. That's the other scenario, okay? So he might have saw it was Maitreya. I don't know. So first one, he's delusional. Second one's a mistake. Third one, he just posted it because it was a regular experience and it wasn't anything from one of these masters. And then in regards to the woman's experience there was... I actually have a link. If you scroll down to Mystic Takeaway, it's down toward the bottom. I interviewed Alyssa Groff, who interviewed her. And I listened to that podcast. It was quite moving what she was saying. I mean, this woman had some really old, deep-seated issues with men. And I don't know if she was abused or something like that. I don't know. God forbid, hopefully she wasn't. But she had a hard time trusting men from what I remember. And when she saw this guy, whether it was this just a regular guy, who was a former businessman who saw the light and became a Sikh, or was it Maitreya? He had that sign, free hugs. She let her guard down for just a minute and went over and accepted one of the hugs, and it changed her life, and she was healed from, and this is coming from her mouth, from a lot of this ancient, trauma that she had with men. Quite extraordinary. And if it was him and it was just a guy, then he's an extraordinary man, and he's got some loving energy in him that healed somebody. If it was Maitreya, it's just par for the course, I hate to say. But because Maitreya's energy heals all the time in that way. Now, the fourth scenario, which is also very likely, much more likely than I think Ben being delusional, is that Maitreya, when he would appear to somebody, would create a familiar, a thought form of himself. And he could make it look however he wanted to look, a young person, an old person, this race, that race. And there are times, and there have been times, where they were based off of an individual, and they looked like that other individual. But it wasn't them at that time that person saw them. It was Maitreya's thought form of this familiar. Ben even said somebody wrote in, there was an experience they had. They saw somebody look just like Ben. He was the same height, same everything. Hair was white, but was black. And it was Maitreya. So, was that the case? I don't know. I'm just throwing these out there for you to think about. But if it isn't him, and Ben made a mistake or whatever, it doesn't discount everything else that Ben talked about, everything else he did. To me, what you're saying is kind of like, you and I are in a convenience store, and you and I are only ones in the convenience store, and you see the sign on the lottery, and the lottery says, Mega Millions, $2 billion, right, or whatever, right? And you put your $2 down on the ticket, you buy the ticket on a Monday, it plays on Tuesday, and you put it in your wallet, and you and I leave the store, and I turn around, and I'm just like, man, you're an idiot. Why would you ever put $2 down on the lottery? Man, nobody ever wins the lottery. You're a sucker, you're this, and you believe me for one moment, right? And you're like, yeah, you're right. And you take the lottery ticket out of your wallet, you rip it up, and you throw it in the trash, and it's gone, right? And then a day or two later it plays, and then a day or two later you find out that winning ticket was actually played at the exact moment that you bought that ticket in the exact same spot, and you and I were the only ones in that store at that time, so you knew you won the ticket, right? There's no way to get this ticket back. and you would be very resentful for me, to me, but you would also be kicking yourself for the rest of your life, right? To me, it's like, taking this information and just throwing it out on whether it's just because it's against your beliefs or because of something that's said or something that you see as a contradiction between what Ben did or said or whatever like this. To me, it's like taking a lottery ticket and just throwing it right in the trash. Because there was a reason why you know this information. And, I always tell people to look into it and see if there's truth to it, and that's true, right? But if you apply the information, and this is what I'm hoping, if you apply the information, you'll see that it will change your life if you're not, at the very least, it will change your life. Because that's what it's done for me. So, but you have to apply it. You can't just look at this one little thing and get hung up on this one little thing. It doesn't work like that, and so, I've had experiences with Maitreya. Some of them are quite extraordinary. You don't have to believe what I'm saying to be true. You might even think that I'm delusional by what I've said. I got nothing to go back on it with. I just know I'm just standing on my own 2 feet, knowing that I had those experiences. I've had people say that I was wrong, it never happened, and whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, right? That's what you think. That's what you think. I know it to be I have a different experience, and some of the experiences happened before I didn't even know who Maitreya was or who Benjamin Creme was. One really well-known one in my life was the payphone story. I have a video of it on my channel, of course, right? But I was traveling in Japan, playing with a band, and a woman asked me for my autograph I think it was in Osaka, and I said, I signed it with a peace sign, a heart, and a happy face. And then I signed it a few more times when I was in Japan, and then I flew back to the United States, got on with my life. I was pretty new to Atlanta at the time, didn't have a lot of friends here. I was out of work, so I couldn't even tell any coworkers that I had signed my name like that. I think I just told my mother, maybe my dad in St. Louis, my mother in South Carolina, and that was it. I don't remember telling anybody else but those 2 individuals. And then I got lost, and I was trying to find where I was going to go. I needed to make a call. I pulled into this gas station, and in the corner of this tiny little gas station parking lot is this phone. And written in black magic marker on the phone, it said, "To Gary," and there was a peace sign, a heart, and a happy face. It said, "Still alive and well," and there was a cross, and it was signed to Christ. I didn't know that the people were having miracles. So why would I have even put that there? I mean, I wasn't even looking for anything like that, right? It just happened. Ben didn't do that. He didn't fly over here and put it in there so he could fool me eventually. I mean, he didn't work like that, and then there were other times that, I've had experiences with Maitreya that other people saw that I didn't even see, but it was in response to me asking him for help, like the time he helped me get some trash out of the building I was cleaning. And this woman, Carol, was the one that saw him. She doesn't know anything about Maitreya. So how could have Ben put that in her mind to do that? You know what I mean? And even if you look at some of the other miracle signs, weeping icons, healing waters, crosses of light, crop circles, UFO sightings, I mean, over and over again, people claiming to have all these angel experiences where they're saved by angels and so forth. Is this all coming from Ben? Is Ben making this all up? And there are a billion people in the world who claim to have had experiences with angels, according to Newsweek or whatever it was magazine. Is that something that he did? Is that because of his delusion? I just can't get it. But like I said, I think that would be the reason why I would explain it is Maitreya used that man as a familiar to talk to this woman who had the experience. That's just me. But I could be wrong, But like I said, it doesn't discount everything else that Ben said. If you look at some of the articles coming from Benjamin Creme's master, none of them had to do with Ben. None of them ever talked about Ben. They all talked about Maitreya. They all talked about what was going on in the world. They all talked about the future of humanity, what we needed to do to bring peace and those kind of things. It had nothing to do with him as a person. And I don't think somebody who was delusional would be that selfless. It would have been about him in some way, is for one thing. So that's the other thing. Now, in terms of the interview, I would say the same thing. That's a possibility. Ben was totally delusional. The other one is he made a mistake. That Maitreya never made an announcement that he'd made an interview on TV or whatever like that. The other one is maybe something else is going on that you don't quite understand. And you're not alone, because a lot of people say this, right? Or ask this question about it. And, there's one thing that has been coming up in my mind lately about this is maybe possibly, as a theory, Maitreya is speaking to the media, but he's being asked not to be recorded. And they agree because they know who he is, or they have an idea who he is, and they agree to do it because they want to hear what he has to say, and he speaks for that time, and there's no record of it on the internet. Because there's a lot of people that can cut this up and move this around and make it sound like this and everything like this. And, even Elon Musk just announced that he has this new app that I can't wait to get, that you can speak into a microphone or the phone of your, in your phone and sound like any kind of celebrity. It's crazy. And it sounds just like them. So what could they do and make Maitreya sound if they really wanted to? So maybe he's concerned about that, and that's the reason why he's not being recorded. This is just a theory. Okay, this might not explain it for you enough to where I can see where you're coming from, but it's just a theory. The other thing is that maybe you have already seen him and just didn't recognize him because he's not speaking in such a way that you would recognize him in that way. I have not seen him on TV as of yet, as I know of, because I don't watch TV like that. I just kind of watch the internet. So, but I'm also not looking for him. Now, in terms of Share International volunteers, I do know some people who've claimed to have seen him on TV, but they don't talk about it really because Ben said not to talk about it. And if I ever see him on TV, I'm not going to bring it up on this channel that I saw him on TV. I'm not going to tease you or hint to you that I saw him. I'm just going to let it go and wait for you to figure it out on your own, because it's always better, according to Benjamin Creme, for every one of us to recognize Maitreya for ourselves. And if I bring up that I had seen him, of course people are going to bug me trying to figure out where it is. I might slip up and say it and all that kind of stuff, so it'd be better for me just not to say anything. So I'm not going to say anything whenever I see him, right? Now, the other thing is, in terms of familiars, I've seen Maitreya several times, and he's looked however he looked, whether it was an elderly black woman or elderly white man or a young kid or a young African-American male to a woman to, this, that, and the other. But there was this one time that I saw him, and this was before I was really reading this information, and I hadn't read it in Benjamin Creme's book of how Ben said he looked in the Asian community of London. But after I had this experience, I happened to read it in the book, and they matched almost exactly. So I often wonder if this is how he looks, but he does not look anything like the white-robed, figure, the bearded figure in Nairobi, Kenya. It doesn't look anything like that. And the way I saw him, that Ben kind of described him looking, is he was about 6'2", 6'3", broad-shouldered, very thin, very handsome man. Couldn't tell if he was in his early 30s or late 40s. I mean, early 30s or early 40s, excuse me, not late 40s. He didn't look that old, but he looked early 30s, early 40s, but not too young, but looked youngish. I could tell in his eyes he seemed older than he really was, but I couldn't really tell. And in his face, he was had this very kind of loving presence in his face, very calm, and just this wisdom in his eyes that I can't describe. You can see it in the pictures of Maitreya right there. It's that same kind of look in his eyes. But he had a kind of a broad forehead, high cheekbones, kind of a bigger eyes, small chin and mouth, and a thin mustache. And he can wear a mustache perfectly. And the only other person in the world that I know that can wear a mustache like Maitreya is Tom Selleck, because he wore that mustache really well. It didn't look out of place for him at all. He was very, like I said, very put together and very handsome man, and had thick black hair, and it was curly, and he had kind of wet it back with some gel or something like this. But very put together, very, very nice looking. But he was also kind of a formidable looking man because he was big, and I'm almost 6 feet, and he was taller than me, but he was he was broad shouldered and looked very much in shape. He didn't look out of shape at all. It was, but anyway, that's kind of how I saw him. And so one of the things that Benjamin Creme said in his book, that when I read it, when he was kind of describing how I saw him, he said, if you look at the Maitreya Buddha statues, that's kind of how he looks. And when I went back and I started looking to try to find images of Maitreya Buddha, and I saw it. I was like, yeah, it actually does kind of look like him. Maybe not exactly, but especially the head and the mouth and the cheekbones and everything, it looks almost exactly how he looked, except he looked Arabic. It was just, I don't know. I mean, that's just how I saw him. So I'm hoping that I'm right and that's how he looks, but he might not even look like that. I don't know, I don't really care. The other scenario that kind of, when people talk to me about, why aren't we seeing him on TV and blah, 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 or even things like this with Ben or whatever, I've been around this information long enough, but I've also been lucky enough to try to apply it to myself and utilize the time that I've had available on this earth to apply it. And I've seen how it's changed my life. So in another lottery scenario, you and I are friends, but I haven't told you that I won the lottery, right? I just won the $1.2 billion, right? And I didn't tell you. And I went down to the lottery office, filled out the paperwork, paid the taxes, and they wired all the money to my account. And I just saw my account went from a few $100s to $1.2 billion, right? I am excited. I've already hired the real estate agent and the interior designer, and I'm going to be living the rest of my days in Maui, unless I'm traveling somewhere else in the world. That's where my home base is going to be, right? And I'm looking out. And every morning every evening I'll be able to see a Maui sunset on a beach, right? With these huge glass windows and just, I paid whatever I wanted to pay for that house, right? That's what I'm looking forward to, right? And I am just stoked and excited, right? And you come up to me and go, man, and I just happened to mention, I was going to mention to you I won the lottery, and you interrupt me and go, anybody that plays the lottery is a moron, man. Who would do something like that? They are just dumb. And I'm like going, I just won, right? And you're not even hearing it, right? And then I just kind of say, well, okay, you believe what you believe, but I already told you, I already won, man. And so for me, it's about the teachings. And I just read something that Maitreya said in the last video, where he talked about don't be attached to the physical form of the teacher. Just use the teaching and apply the teaching. And when you do, you'll notice that he is in you and you are in him. Well, when you have that experience day in and day out, when you really start to work and live with this information in that way, it's like you've won the lottery. It's actually better than winning the lottery, because it really is. It's an experience that I can't say, because it also starts to change the people around you, and you start to see it. Like the poster says, be the change you want to see in the world. So the key with this information or the Bible or the Quran or anything is to take the truths that you get from it. Don't throw away everything. Just take some truths from it and try to apply it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then it wasn't any good, A tree is known by its fruit. A tree is known by its fruit. If you haven't applied the information, then you can't truly say that you've planted any seeds yet. But if you start to apply the information, you will start to plant the seeds. And then if it grows into something magnificent, well, then it was something to it. If it dies on the vine, then there was nothing to it at all. Ben was delusional. But you won't know until you apply the information. I assure you that. So, and then with Raj Patel, I'll end with this. I never saw Raj Patel as being Maitreya. There were a lot of people, of course, who did. He looked like him. But the reason why I didn't think he was Maitreya, not because he didn't look like Maitreya looked in the parking lot, but for me that time, but he didn't have that energy that Maitreya has. He didn't articulate what he had to say the same way that Maitreya had the times that I had seen him, and even the time that I saw him on a video when he was an Afro-Cuban man in Hyde Park. And he said things like, keep your eyes on the prize, and the prize is humanity. Raj Patel didn't talk like that. I mean, he just kind of breezed from one sentence to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And he's a wonderful man, and he's very concerned about humanity, and he's got some solutions in mind and those kind of things. And I'm happy he's doing what he's doing. I just knew he wasn't Maitreya because he was speaking so fast. I mean, you had a hard time understanding what he was saying. And you asked about, has anybody ever seen an interview from Maitreya? Well, this isn't his interview on TV, but Ben had made a comment one time at a conference that there was a guy that came up to him in Europe, I think it was in London, after he had given one of his lectures. And he didn't know the guy. The guy just came up and said, well, I actually was lucky enough to attend a lecture that Maitreya was giving in London. And Ben asked his master, and I think he said, yeah, he was there. And Maitreya invited certain people to hear him speak in the Asian community of London, and whether he's still doing it or not, I don't know. But some of them were famous people who were told not to say anything until after the day of declaration. So we got that to look forward to. But then there were also people like this gentleman who was just an ordinary man. And he said he was sitting in the audience, and he said, you didn't have to worry about trying to remember anything. He said, you just remembered it. Everything he said, he goes, you got to remember everything he said, because it was so simple. And it wasn't over anybody's head, but yet he was speaking in a way that he said it's like his whole heart opened up. Like he couldn't deny what Maitreya was saying, because he knew it to be true himself. And so he said it was like he was punching you in the heart, I think is what he said, to something like that, And then he turned to Ben and he goes, but you, sir, you talk way too much. So, that's somebody, And like I said, I've had some people that I know who think that they've seen Maitreya on TV and they're not telling anybody. So, take it for what it is, Alexander, But if you don't believe this information to be true, and you've done the investigation and you've tried to apply this information, hopefully, and it didn't work, then let it go. Move on. You don't have to stress about it. You already know what you know, and that's it. And in the end, Ben will either be proved right or he'll be proved wrong. There won't be a third option. So anyway, hopefully you can take my answer and it works for you, or you at least see my side of it, or you at least understand that I tried to answer your question, I guess. But anyway, I love you guys. You guys take care. I look forward to putting up other videos in the future.
Take action.
Have a good day.
And help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.